finishing tip. Today we're going to talk about raising the grain. So what I've got here is a piece of just simple Baltic birch plywood, which isn't really important. The point is, like any other wood, it has a grain. And when you're sanding, like say I sand this down with, doesn't really matter, 220 grit or something, I sand with the grain like I do with any other wood that isn't already finished. And it feels smooth when I'm done. But what I've done for a lot of the grain, rather than taking it off with the sandpaper, I've actually just pushed it down and caused it to lay down. So it feels very smooth, but rather than being perfectly smooth, it's kind of like hair that's been combed down. It feels smooth, but it really isn't. So in order to ensure that it actually is smooth, what we're going to do is raise that up and well, take it off of there. The reason that we need to do this, I know usually when something feels smooth, it's going to look smooth. That makes sense. But when you go ahead and spray a finish on something like this, those hairs are going to stand up. All those fibers are going to, lift, and you're not going to have a smooth finish. So there are several ways to go about raising the grain and getting rid of it. One of which is to spray something like sanding sealer on there, or your first coat of lacquer. You do that, you let it harden, and then when you sand it off or you scuff it down, that basically has the same effect. It takes away that excess grain and gives you a smooth surface to work with. What we're going to do is a little different. Instead of using sanding sealer or something like that, I'm going to use methanol. Now methanol is not actually coating, obviously. All I'm going to do is raise up the grain and rub it off before I put any kind of finish on there. So what you want to do for this is make sure that you're using something that's going to evaporate quickly. Don't try and do this with water. Water is not good for wood. It soaks in, it can cause warping, it can cause cracking, all sorts of nonsense. What we want is something like methanol, or denatured alcohol works very well. Even actual alcohol, like Everclear grain alcohol, probably not going to have much of a problem if you use something like that. Denatured alcohol evaporates quicker to the best of my knowledge, so it's probably a better idea, but both would work. So I'm just going to bring you in quicker, or not quicker, I'm going to bring you in closer. That makes way more sense. A little closer here, and you can see what I'm doing when I explain it. Alright, so this process is pretty simple. What I need is my methanol, which I don't have a methanol bottle, but I've got a bottle that says methanol, so I assume that's what it is. Just kidding. My methanol and something to scrub off that grain. Now you can use just a rough cloth for this if you want. I'm going to use a piece of red Scotch-Brite because, well, it's rougher than a rough cloth, and I feel like it. So what you want to do is kind of saturate your wood. Now you don't have to worry too much about getting a bunch of liquid on here because, like I said, it evaporates very quickly. So I've kind of got it all over the place now. And this felt smooth when I began. It was sanded down to 220 grit, so it really felt like it was ready for a finish pretty much. But as this dries, I can feel wood grain coming up. So before it dries, I'm going to take my cloth and go, Scotch-Brite pad, and go against the grain and knock off all of that raised up grain. And I'm pushing fairly hard here because I really do want to take off anything that I can. And this cloth was, or this Scotch-Brite pad, why do I keep doing that? Was a little bit dirty, but you can see that it actually pulled off quite a bit of stuff on there. And that was all just fibers because I cleaned this before I did this process to it. So even once that's complete, this is still going to feel fairly rough. Okay? Sorry, I need to fix that. There we go. This is still going to feel fairly rough now that I've done that. It was sanded, and all I did was take something to it that should, it should obviously make it even smoother because it's basically sandpaper. But because I've raised all that grain and taken it off of there, this now feels considerably rougher than it did before. So now that I've gotten rid of that, I'm just going to take a piece of 220 sandpaper and go over it with the grain again, and then it'll be finished. And there we go. Now that this feels smooth again, I don't have to worry about the raised grain anymore, and this is ready for either a finish or a better finish sanding with something like 400 grit. So there we go. We've got our smooth piece of wood with no fibers laying down, and we're finished. That's it. We've raised the grain and we've pulled it off. So that concludes our video about working with wood to make things stand up straight so that we can rub them off. Hope this was helpful, and see you next time.